Welcome to Just Energy Radio with your host, naturopath and medical intuitive, Dr. Rita Louise. We have learned from Einstein's theory that matter and energy are one. Physicists believe that all systems in nature have their own particular way of vibrating. From the swinging of a pendulum to the waves of the ocean to the light that brightens the sky each day, each of these oscillates at its own unique rate. The same holds true for every thought, feeling, event, or word we speak. Each has its own frequency or rate of vibration. What many of us don't realize is when we take everything in our universe down to its simplest form, it is all just energy. Join Dr. Rita Louise on a journey through time and space where past, present, and future collide. Today, what you believe may be called into question. What we want to know is, who made up the rules? Be brave and step outside the box. We are about to turn our world upside down and venture into the unknown. Hold on. We are departing our own beliefs and entering alternative realms. Enjoy the possibilities.
Hello and welcome to Just Energy Radio. I'm your host, Dr. Rita Louise, and thank you all for tuning into the show today. Oh my God, we have just so much excitement going on. In the first hour, we're going to be speaking to the famous Uri Geller. Maybe we'll bend some spoons. Who knows? And in the second hour, we're going to be speaking with a good friend, Cash Peters. But I just want to get jumping into this whole thing. As I think everyone knows, Uri Geller is famous for his ability to bend spoons and work with his psychic abilities to interact with the world around us. And so, without further ado, please welcome to Just Energy Radio, and I am so excited, Uri Geller. Hi, Uri. How are you?
Rita, thank you so much for inviting me onto your show. I'm in my home in a small village outside London. The village is called Sonning-on-Thames. It's right on the banks of the River Thames. And believe it or not, this area where my house has been built 50 years ago was a healing center 1,000 years ago.
Well, that's pretty amazing. So do you think that your house is built on like some ley lines, or, I mean, obviously it must be some kind of a sacred site?
Well, I'll tell you how I found out. You know, I've been living here for 33 years. It's an unusual house because it is actually the copy of the White House in Washington, except obviously in smaller proportions. And when we moved into the house, 1983, an old lady came up to me in the village and she said, "Oh, you know, Mr. Geller, your house is sitting right on a healing center that was there 1,000 years ago." So I told her, "Come on, how do you know that 1,000 years ago? That's quite a long time ago." And she said, "It's in the Doomsday Book." Now, if you don't know what the Doomsday Book means, it's an ancient English book where very unusual properties were registered. So I found it fascinating. I'm not a healer, but I guess, you know, I believe in synchronicities and I believe in things that are meant to happen. And I've seen many, many houses, dozens of houses before this one. But when we drove down the driveway, I knew this is it. So it's just a fascinating place, amazing vibrations, frequencies. You know, the water is an energy source. So I'm right on the water, and we're very, very happy living here.
But I think that people that are sensitive to energy can feel the good vibes on a piece of property and be drawn to it. And so it would make sense to me that you would, you know, as I like to say, you would end up living in a house with good mojo.
Oh, very much so. You know very well that everything is made from energy. I mean, Albert Einstein in 1924 wrote and came up with this incredible scientific equation, E equals mc squared. So to remind those who forgot from school what it means, it basically means that Albert Einstein proved scientifically that everything in the universe is made from energy. Me, you, the telephone I'm holding, I'm going to knock the telephone on the table. Just listen. Well, to us, it sounds solid. The table is solid, the phone is solid, but it's not. It's really amazing and bizarre that I'm just really holding energy in my hand. It feels solid to us because it's vibrating in a certain frequency that feels solid to us. But because everything is energy and we're energetic beings, we are basically energy frequency vibrators. I think you're right. I think we as ordinary individuals who have a little intuitive forces in us can feel when they enter the right place, the right surroundings, the right ambience, the right, call it whatever you want to call it. And I felt that 33 years ago in this house.
Well, I guess you're right on the right radio show, because this show is called Just Energy Radio. And that's kind of the basis of the show, because we're all just energy.
Not only that, Rita, but you know very well that all humanity, we are all, I guess, attached to each other with an invisible spiritual thread. All of us, all humanity. And I do believe very firmly that through that invisible spiritual thread, we can transmit the power of love, the power of healing, the energy, positive energy. And the distance doesn't really matter because it is there. And, throughout my career, I discovered my abilities when I was a very young child. And then we came from a very poor family. So I promised my mom that I'll stop her from working. I'm an Israeli. I was born in Tel Aviv in Israel. And I promised my mother that I'll buy her a television set someday. So that was the initiator. I set out to be successful. And I very much believe in the law of attraction. I was positive. I was motivated. I was inspired to be successful. And it was through a very trivial spoon-bending act and mind reading and fixing broken watches that I kind of catapulted into the world of show business. And of course, parallel to that, and that's why I'm really talking to you, is because there is a book out called The Secret Life of Uri Geller, which exposes the secret side of what I was doing parallel to my show business. I was basically working for the CIA, the Mossad, and other intelligence agencies. So I found that very, very interesting and very inspiring, believe it or not, to have the double life of Uri Geller while I was, performing around the world.
But I think, because of your fame, your notoriety, it opened so many doors to you, where if you were just a secret spy, James Bond kind of person, I don't know that people would invite you in the same way.
I think, Rita, you're absolutely right, because some of my missions were very interesting because they were, like for instance, when the Americans wanted the Russians to sign the Nuclear Arms Reduction Treaty. And Senator Claiborne Pell, who was then the head of the American Foreign Relations Committee, was a great believer in paranormal abilities. And he invited me and he instructed me to bombard the Russians to sign the nuclear treaty. And so he sent Ambassador Max Kempelman from Washington to brief me in London. And then they took me to Geneva. And I know it sounds bizarre and kind of science fiction-y, but it's true. My task was to get close to Yuli Vorontsov, who was the head of the Russian negotiating team, and Al Gore was there with me. And I had to bombard his mind to sign. But, I very quickly learned that it's not only my skills and abilities that helped me throughout many missions. And by the way, they did sign. I got 3 inches away from his head. I telepathically projected into his brain, sign, 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 sign. and they did sign. Now, of course, Rita, I can't totally claim that I did it alone, but there's no doubt in my mind that I was influential. But I realize that it's not only the spoon bending and the mind reading capabilities that helped me achieve certain missions, but it was also, and I'm saying this not to boast or to show off, but I could say that I'm shamelessly saying this, but I used my charisma, I used my personality, I used my character to help me achieve certain impossible missions that I was given to do. And I use that throughout my career because, I'm hugely controversial. I don't have to tell you, Rita. It was from the first moment that I came onto the scene, I was attacked by skeptics, by closed-minded scientists, people who didn't believe. They said, oh, it's all fraud, it's not real, he's using chemicals, sleight of hand, magic, and so on. But I, being a showman and a great PR, I'm a great, what can I say, publicist. And I knew how to take that controversy and mold it and tailor it so it boosts my career rather than drag me down.
Well, and I think people that are in lines of work where you're dealing with the public and especially if you're touching on topics that could be controversial, if you don't have that presence, that charisma, as you said, people won't remember you. You don't remember, Grandpa, the sideshow magician. You remember David Copperfield. You remember Uri Geller. You remember the people that when you meet them, like actually a number of years ago, I got to meet the amazing Kreskin, who, no offense, but I have his picture hanging on the wall in my office because he was very influential to me. And I saw his show. And he was wonderful because he has this presence about him. And I haven't ever met you or seen you perform, but I get the same kind of feeling about you, is that when you're in a room, you fill the room. Period.
Thank you for the compliment. Yes, the amazing Kreskin was great.
He's amazing.
I remember he's all. I'm sorry, but he's still alive, isn't he?
Yes, he is.
He is. He's much older than I am. But I do remember when I was, doing my college shows and the CIA stuff in America, in Stanford Research Institute and so on, I used to watch him on television, and he was brilliant. I don't care how he does what he does. I don't really want to know how he does what he does. I was entertained by him. I was amazed and mystified by him. And that is really the essence of being well-known and famous, like you say, because the span of attention of human beings is very short and it's very narrow, because we're simply bombarded by news day in, day out. People forget very quickly. My television show was, I have a very successful TV series, a format called The Next Uri Geller, where I'm looking for the next me. It's very entertaining. It's not scientific.
You're looking for your replacement.
Exactly. And it's been already in 15 countries. It's going now to China. And and it's 11 weeks in every country live. And when I did it in Sweden a couple of years ago, 3 years ago, I went to have a haircut. And exactly that day, Elizabeth Taylor died. And I told the young lady who was cutting my hair, what a pity, and what a great actress Elizabeth Taylor was. And she said to me, who? I said, Elizabeth Taylor. And she says, I don't know, I never heard of her. And you see, that's when you realize that, my goodness, the new generation, what's going on here? Are they all occupied with war games, machines, and computers, the internet, Facebook, Twitter, Google? It's just scary in a way that those really incredibly known individuals are totally and utterly forgotten.
But some of them live on, in rerun.
Well, but you said it, you see, in reruns, correct, but you said it, controversy. To me, controversy, Rita, was given to me on a silver platter. It was, when I was young, I thought I will be destroyed by controversy. But the biggest lesson in my life about being controversial was when I was asked to do the Johnny Carson show. I didn't know that Johnny Carson was an amateur magician. So I walked into a trap. It was set up with him and James Randi and, the magician. And I sat there for 22 minutes, Rita, humiliated. He was mocking me and sneering and demeaning me. And I bent a spoon. It wasn't bent enough. And there I was. And I thought, that's it, Uri Geller. You are destroyed. And I just knew that I better get back to my hotel, pack up, and go back to Israel. And I was devastated after the show. Nothing worked. The spoon bent. It wasn't enough for him. I went back to my hotel. And this is a true story. I was so drained that I fell on the bed and just fell asleep. Now, the next morning, the phone wakes me up. And I pick up the phone, and the operator says to me, Mr. Geller, I have a Merv Griffin on the line for you. So I said, you mean the Merv Griffin? She says, that's what he says, that he is. And it was. And Merv says to me, Uri Geller, look, I've seen you last night on Johnny Carson. I want you on my show this week. And that's when it dawned on me. It doesn't matter what they say about you, as long as they will spell your name correctly. and this goes back to 100 years ago. Oscar Wilde said, there's only one worse thing in life than being talked about, and that's not being talked about.
True. And one of the things, I watched the Johnny Carson thing, and I think people have this belief that when you use, and I'm going to say the power of the mind, that it is 100% reproducible in every situation, that you could get everything going, under the lights, under the pressure, with them staring at you, you feeling uncomfortable, and it could have, you might have had a cold. It could have been an
Absolutely.
off day for you.
Exactly. And you know what? I really urge your listeners to read The Secret Life of Uri Geller. It's not my book. It's been written about my secret life by Jonathan Margolis, who is a Financial Times journalist. He's a Time magazine journalist, serious journalist. And I also urge you to go to my website and watch the BBC documentary by the same name. It's there uncensored. And again, it's called The Secret Life of Uri Geller. Just watch it. And you will discover incredible things, how the American government used and still uses remote viewers and people who are intuitives and so on. But, Rita, going back to this Johnny Carson, the clip is on YouTube. And I find it amazing that a show that was done about me on Johnny Carson in 1973, I believe, has been viewed by probably over 3 million people in 6 years. That's like filling the Yankee Stadium 64 times, or if, let me think about it, if each of those people has watched, it's a 14-minute video, so if each of those people have watched the 14-minute video, it means they have collectively invested 31,000 days or 85 years in watching a derogatory video about me. Now, for my part, I'm utterly flattered. That's what I have to say.
Well, okay. And you can count me as one of those.
Great, because you probably watched it too. But what
did.
what does this mean? What does this mean to us? I'd like to detach now from talking about skeptics and the controversy, because in the grand scale of the picture, they're insignificant. To me, and this is my opinion, they're a molecular nothing. In the big scale of the cosmos, the universe, consciousness, reality, the paradigm shift, whatever you want to believe in, the world, the 7.3 or 7.5 billion people are believers. I am a believer. I'm not an atheist and I'm not an agnostic. I want to believe that there is some creator out there. And because I'm a religious individual, and we won't talk about religion, but I'm religious, which means I believe in God. And I pray to God. And I believe in the power of prayer. And I always say over 7 billion people cannot be wrong. There must be something out there. What do you think, Rita? Do you believe that there is a creator out there somewhere?
I mean, I believe that there's a creator out there, and I hope this isn't offensive to you, but I think that the God that they talk about in the Bible is really just an extraterrestrial, and the God that we know of as the omnipotent creator of all is not who they write about.
Well, you know what? I can't discount or debunk what you just said because we simply don't know. I agree with you. It could be that 10,000 years ago or 50,000 years ago, indeed, a UFO crashed on Earth, and we are really star children. We are actually extraterrestrial beings because who knows, maybe we're star children. Maybe we were, I don't know, abandoned on this planet and we all crawled up out of a spacecraft. I'm so open-minded. I don't buy into the Darwin theory that we crawled out of the muck from amphibians, we became monkeys, from monkeys, human beings, and so on. I think that there is a higher dimension to our existence on this planet.
I agree. But I want to go back to your talking about prayer for a second. I mean, because I believe that prayer sets our intention. And when we have our intention set, we can create miracles. Okay. Now, but here, part two of my statement. And I hate to go to the spoon bending, but that's what people really want to hear, you know. But when you would do things like bend spoons, bend keys, was there a level of intention that was being set in order to make that happen? See, I'm just trying to learn your secret.
Well, well, there's really no secret. What happens is, when I discovered it, I was about 5 years old. I was eating soup in our tiny kitchen in Tel Aviv. We lived in a one-bedroom apartment with my mother. And by the way, my mother is related to Sigmund Freud, and my name in my British passport is actually Uri Geller Freud. So when that spoon bent and broke in half, my mother wasn't really surprised. She immediately attached it to the great psychologist, to Freud. I thought it was weird and bizarre, and I was a show-off, so I wanted to demonstrate it to my friends, to the pupils, to the teachers in school as I grew older. And there was no big deal. I just stroked the spoon. Yes, of course, there's an intention to bend it or to melt it. And I do find myself many a time talking to the spoon, talking to the metal, and it bends and breaks. What fascinates me today, Rita, is I always ask this big question: how on earth did I manage to instill spoon bending into world culture? It was a rather trivial demonstration of a spoon bending, which slowly became an iconical spoon bending because there were movies like The Matrix. I remember the first movie in which I was mentioned was Woody Allen's Annie Hall, and then cartoons and TV guides and games, and singers started singing about spoon bending like Johnny Cash, Kenny Rogers, Michael Stipe, Incubus. So I'm just kind of freaked out. The movies like The Matrix, how the spoon became so iconic in nature of describing or translating energy in action, and a tangible energy. So to answer your question, I don't know. It just happens. I want it to happen, and it does.
Well, that works. But I think the idea that someone can touch something or hold something or stroke something that, as we were talking about at the very beginning of the show, that is solid in nature, that you can bang on the table and make it go thump, 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 and then just have it melt and bend, breaks every single law of physics that we know of.
Well, maybe that's why the Albert Einstein equation E=mc² is so powerful and important, because maybe this is all to do with energy. And obviously we can go way beyond that. And I can ask you the question, Dr. Rita, do you really exist? Am I really talking to you? And are you really somewhere in the United States? Or am I creating you? Or is my subconscious or consciousness or quantum entanglement or super different reality, maybe I'm creating you or you are creating me? Do we really exist? Are we really tangible beings? Or are we pure energy? So we really know very little. I mean, you can't even answer what came first, the chicken or the egg. Mm-hmm. What an elementary question. But you can't really be sure. So you can't answer.
But if it is a dream and you're imagining me and I'm imagining you, what a great dream that is.
And it is a great dream, because to us it's happening. To us it's in existence. To us we feel, we see, we taste, we touch, we smell, we feel the vibrational energy from from objects that we believe are not alive. And then comes another question. It's the powerful saying, the last frontier is not space. The last frontier is our mind. And then comes that journey into inner space. Okay, there is outer space, and there's no end, and it's infinity out there, which means nothing ever ends. But then there is the other journey, the other side, the other way, backwards into the atom, into the molecular structure of things, of nature. And then when we travel deeper and deeper, we find new universes, we find new galaxies. And then we travel in inner space and continue the journey. That side doesn't end. That's infinity too. So wow, what a life we're living in.
Well, and I believe that there's a whole world that lives and exists outside of our physical perception. The world of ghosts, the world of spirit guides, the world of, other dimensional beings that, I know I've interacted with. I know a lot of other people that have interacted with, but, them skeptic people or, if you had to explain it in the physical plane, you can't.
But forget the skeptics. I just told you 5 minutes ago that they're insignificant. To me, I'll repeat the words, molecular nothings. And the reason is this. What you just said about spirits and guides, of course they exist. Then please just go back to Albert Einstein's theory. Not only he proved that everything is made from energy, but he also proved scientifically that energy cannot be destroyed. Therefore, you must ask the question, okay, if energy cannot be destroyed, then what happens when we die? What happens to our body? What happens to our soul? What happens to our spirit? If energy cannot destroy, our spirit must continue living. I'm a huge believer in the afterlife. There's no doubt in my life that ghosts and spirits exist. I had also encounters with the spirit world. I'm a believer.
That's good.
Do you know, may I tell you a story, a
Sure.
ghost story that happened to me when my mother passed away, God
Is it
bless her.
spooky?
Yeah, to me, it was the first real ghost story that I experienced.
Okay.
My mother died. I took my mother out of Israel, and she lived with us in New York, and then she came to live with us here in England, and she died here with us. She was 91, God bless her. And I got permission from the local clergy, from the vicar, and from my rabbi to bury her in the local small village cemetery, because I wanted her close to us, to me, to my wife, to my children, and so on. So we buried her, and the rabbi gave me a telephone number of a stonemason who would do her tombstone. And I called him up, and he said to me, "Look, Uri, may I come down to your house, because I want you to choose the different granites and different marbles from which you will, want your mother's tombstone to be made out of." So I said, "Okay, come this Sunday." So he comes in a small van, and he rings the intercom, and I don't open the gate. I said to him through the intercom, "I'm coming out to see you." I've never done that before. I don't know why I didn't press the intercom to open out the gates, the big gates for him. So I walked up the driveway, and through our very large iron gates, I saw the white van in which he was sitting, and next to him sat a dog. And I said, "Wow, this guy is great, because he loves dogs." Now, we are dog lovers. All my life I had dogs. And when I saw the dog next to him, I knew that this is the right man to do my mother's tombstone. So I get to the big gate, and I open the side gate, and I walk out to his van, and the first thing I walk towards the passenger seat, because I wanted to pat the dog. So I got to the window of the car, and I looked in, and I told him to roll down the window so I can pat his dog. But then I noticed that there was no dog on his seat. And this was a small van, so it was just a cabin with 2 seats. And I said, "Where is your dog?" And his face ashened, Rita, and he looked at me, and he said, shaking, he said, "Mr. Geller." And I said, you had your dog with you here." He said, "Mr. Geller, my dog passed away 6 months ago, and I used to carry him everywhere I drove to. He sat right there next to me." And I'm getting goosebumps now, because I was so stunned, because I saw a ghost. It was the first time in my life that I actually saw tangibly a ghost. And my first reaction was to run back home to tell my wife, Hannah, that I just saw a ghost of a dog. So that's my ghost story.
But that's a good one. I like that.
Yeah.
So
I hope I'm not boring you with these stories, but I'm so overwhelmed when I talk about our beloved ones who passed away and went over to the other side, because I'm a believer. I know that someday we're all going to meet somewhere out there in a different dimension.
Well, and I believe that we have amnesia when we're here, and there's part of me that's kind of excited to go to the other side to find out all the stuff that I missed out on in this life, when you get that new perspective on what you did and what was really going on and all of that stuff that's out there that we're not totally privy to.
Yes, very much so. But being open-minded and being a believer and being sensitive or intuitive, I think automatically opens the gateway for you, and it leads you to those areas that you want to explore and you want to believe in. On my website, I have some fascinating things. Let me just remind you that on my website, you can go directly to Amazon and get the book, The Secret Life of Uri Geller. I think you will find it mesmerizing. You will also find the documentary, The Secret Life of Uri Geller, which was produced by the BBC, and it was actually directed by an Oscar-winning director called Vikram Jayanti. And this is just a recent documentary. Please do view it. You will also find my email address on my website. And believe it or not, although I get over 200 emails a day, I answer all my emails. I have 2 BlackBerries. I travel with them everywhere. And whenever I get an email, I immediately answer. And there is another phenomenon that I've been fascinated by. And I'll tell you what it is in a moment. It's to do with some kind of a mysterious occurrence, and it's the 11:11. So,
well, that was where I was going to stop reading my mind.
I am reading your mind. I
have to tell you, I was so excited that. All right, so I always tell people that the number that comes up for me the most is 7-Eleven. And I joke around, I can go get a Slurpee at 7-Eleven, but it's 7-Eleven. But today, I actually had an 11:11. I was like, and there are several clocks in my kitchen living room area that you can see all from my dining room. And I was standing in my dining room and I saw 11:11 on one clock. And then I looked to the other clock and it said 11:11. Then I looked at this other clock and it said 11:11. I was just surrounded by 11:11 today.
Yep.
It was very cool.
By the way, Rita, where are you based? Where are you calling me from?
I live in Dallas. So in Texas.
Dallas, because I got, my daughter Natalie lives in Los Angeles. So she texts, she WhatsApped me 11:11. It's 11:11 here. I've seen 11:11, and I immediately send a loving message to my son and daughter. My son is an attorney in New York, and my son is called Daniel, who he was actually born in New York and raised up in England. And my daughter was born in Connecticut, and she now lives in Los Angeles. So whenever I see the 11:11 on my BlackBerry, I immediately grab the moment. But this started happening to me, I would say 2 decades ago, and I decided to write an article about this phenomenon. And I called it, I labeled it, If Your Eyes Are Attracted to 11:11. And I was shocked and inundated by thousands, not hundreds, but thousands of emails started pouring in from all around the world. Oh, Mr. Geller, my gosh, I can't believe it, but I see it too. This happens to me in my kitchen, in my car, on my computers, in airplanes. I just couldn't believe my eyes. So then I started researching it, and I came to the conclusion that it is really a strange or bizarre happening, and it's some kind of an awakening sign. And then I started seeing how many presidents, well, first of all, Jesus Christ is 11 letters. Then how many presidents like George W. Bush, 11 letters, Bill Clinton, 11 letters, Jimmy Carter, 11 letters, John Kennedy, 11 letters, Barack Obama, 11 letters. I mean, I can go on and on and on. It's just really mind-blowing. So I continued investigating it and researching the phenomenon. And so you'll find that also quite an interesting read. That's also on my homepage. So it's basically called If Your Eyes Are Attracted to 11:11.
So I know that when I see, I mean, for me, 7-Eleven or 11-11 or, one of those time prompts that come up, I haven't quite figured out what it all means, but I do know one thing that I stop. I kind of make acknowledgement of what I'm doing in that moment, take a nice deep breath, and say thank you. I always take that moment to acknowledge it.
That's brilliant. I am always take the moment to pray for sick children around the world, for people who need the prayers, and so that's what I do. It takes me a few seconds, but I really do stop, contemplate, do an affirmation, a little prayer, and then I go on with my day.
So have you noticed, I mean, it's something that I keep saying that I'm going to do, but apparently I'm not doing it very well. Have you noticed that when you do see that time prompt that you are in a certain type of activity or in a certain type of feeling?
Not really, Rita. The
Okay.
11/11 phenomenon occurs to me very kind of out of the blue, but it happens so many times. And I even tried to look into the scientific side of the 11/11, and I found out that scientists have found a gene, if you didn't know this, Rita, on chromosome number 11. This was in mice, which may be involved in DNA repair, and this ties in with the theory that stem cells, basically found in bone marrow, for example, are responsible for the aging process when they become useless and non-resistant to DNA damage. So by making stem cells more hardy, and so I believe that longevity can be increased. So I find it amazing that it's also to do with the 11/11. The correlation with the prolongation of life is incredible, and it's to do with the number 11. So I find this amazingly fascinating.
Cool. So I'm going to switch topics here a little bit, but I saw a press release in the last week or two. All right, I don't watch the news, and I don't read like Yahoo News or any of those news things. Other people have to tell me about things. But I was told when I told a friend of mine that I was going to have you on the show that you had been contacted regarding the missing Malaysian Flight 370. And so I was wondering if you could kind of share a little bit about what they contacted you about and, what you found out.
Okay, I know a substantial figure in Malaysia, and they contacted me, and they basically said, Uri, can you help? They brought all kind of, from witch doctors to different things, that we won't go into. But I took this request seriously because I've done remote viewing. I actually indirectly set up the remote viewing program for the CIA, which you will read in the book, The Secret Life, and you will see in the documentary, the BBC documentary. But what I decided to do, maybe rather naively or innocently or foolishly, I asked my Facebook followers and Twitter to help me remote view where they believe the plane went down or what happened, and tell me the information. Because I thought that would narrow kind of my remote viewing experiment, or the request. I wanted to fulfill the request accurately. So I got a huge backlash from a few skeptics that I'm taking advantage, of the poor families and so on. I respect that, but I didn't really mean to do that, obviously. So I got many reports from my Facebook followers and Twitter followers. And my conclusion, and there were a few conclusions which I basically let the Malaysian contact know. But the most rational and logical obviously, is that the plane did crash and it didn't land somewhere, although I gave that a 2% out of 100, that maybe indeed the plane was hijacked to some place. But they still don't have any, any credible items, anything from the plane. They're still looking for something like a seat of the plane or life jacket. They don't have anything in their hands yet. So my most powerful remote viewing assumption, or bringing in the target conclusion, was that something happened to the pilot. Either someone broke into the cockpit and forced the pilot to do something, or the pilot did it on his own accord. And there was one line in the press. Well, the press found out about the tweet, and my Facebook, and they came out with a story. And obviously, it was immediately worldwide news. And in most of the stories, it says that I said, and it's interesting because I never said that the pilots overcame with fire, with smoke. And maybe that is true. Maybe they somehow plucked it out of my mind, but that is my conclusion. And I also sent them coordinates of where I believe the plane crashed or landed. So that is my conclusion. And I did that through remote viewing. And now everyone is waiting, especially the poor, the families of the missing people from the plane. They're all hoping that indeed the plane did not crash, that indeed it was hijacked and it landed somewhere in North Korea or Pakistan or, I don't know, some country. They're all praying that is, that's what really happened. But sadly, if you are rational and logical, and you would guess and say that, yeah, the plane crashed somewhere.
Well, and if it was hijacked, I'm sure by now there would be some kind of a demand or some kind of something to indicate, why they hijacked it. I mean, you don't hijack something to just take a plane full of people someplace.
Well, to my amazement, I've seen generals on certain channels in America actually saying that they believe that the plane was hijacked to somewhere and it's hidden in a hangar somewhere and it's going to be used for, negative purposes later on. And that is so unbelievable. It's almost as unbelievable as some people saying that a UFO kidnapped it or snatched it, or the plane flew into a black hole. That is so improbable and impossible. But there is always that slight, tiny percentage that something really weird or supernatural could have happened to the plane. I don't believe that, yes? So don't take me out of context. I'm saying this on the show. I don't believe that at all. I really do believe that something happened in the cockpit that led the plane to fly for so many hours. It was like a zombie plane, a phantom plane, with probably everyone dead aboard, and it crashed.
It's just sad. Sad.
It is. It is sad, and we should find out the truth very, very soon. We have to, because this is a big airplane, and it's made by Boeing, and we all want to know what went wrong. And everyone is now, as is looking for the black box. And there are certain more days that the black box will be transmitting a blip, and we better find it before it goes dead.
Well, and I've been hearing from some people, not a lot of people, that, some government is going to use it for a false flag event and escalate hostilities between countries. And I'm like, it all comes out of the woodwork. when you have an
Yeah,
unknown phenomena.
exactly. But it is still a mystery, and there are conspiracy theorists plentiful. The internet is open there for anyone to report and write whatever they want to. I mean, I look at Wikipedia, and this is my opinion, and I'm allowed to voice my opinion. But in my opinion, it was hijacked by skeptics, because if you look at Uri Geller Wikipedia, for instance, 95% of everything that is said probably there is negative about me. Where is all the positive stuff? Where is the thing about the new book, the BBC documentary, my successful television shows? It's amazing how the internet is open for anyone to say, to write anything. A lot of people hide behind the freedom of speech and this and that. But I'll tell you, on the internet, you will find negative things about Mother Teresa too. And anyone who is in the public eye, who is kind of famous or a celebrity, you will find good things and bad things. So about the airplane, you will find stories about it being, kidnapped by a UFO, that it went in the warped black hole into some kind of a cosmic whirlpool. And, there are gullible people too out there who tend to believe in these things.
Mm-hmm. With no proof, with no evidence.
Rita, let me ask you this.
Okay.
In one line, what do you think happened?
I mean, when I kind of feel into that whole energy, it's like I don't feel like the whole plane went down, that it maybe exploded in air. I mean, because I don't feel like the plane, I'm kind of a feeler, that the whole plane went down, that the plane hit the water.
Yes. So you do feel that. May I just prod you a little more? That explosion, Rita, that you feel, do you feel that it was a terrorist act, or do you think it was the plane malfunctioned?
I feel that it was more of a terrorist act. It doesn't feel like something broke.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And, probably when the parts of the plane will be found, whether at the bottom of the ocean with robotic submarines, and the black box will be found, a lot of the mystery surrounding this episode, this sad, tragical episode of the plane disappearing, will be revealed. And a lot of people will have kind of, a black face, or they will be pretty embarrassed in what they said. And some people say, "Oh, you see, I was right. I knew it. That's what happened."
Mm-hmm. Well,
Rita,
and there'll be a percentage that do that, and then there'll be this other percentage. It's kind of like the whole 2012 thing. I mean, I don't know where you sat on the side of the fence of, the Mayan calendar ending or whatever, but there were a big group of people that were saying the world's coming to an end. It's like, well, what happened to all of them? Did they climb back in their little holes?
Yeah.
Because it didn't happen.
Of course, I mean, there are still people. I'm telling you, the internet is full with theories, conspiracy theories that the American government did it. I mean, this is shocking, absolutely shocking. There are people who think the Mossad did it. There are people. It's just incredible to what extent your mind, the imagination, can stretch. But parallel to that, vis-a-vis that, you can understand why terrorists can be, or young people can be so easily radicalized to blow themselves up in the name of religion and so forth. It's scary. And I hope that very soon, through some kind of the power of prayer or the power of media or television, will unite together and somehow send some kind of a positive message to the universe to help us, because our planet is in such a mess. Look at the ecological situation. Look at the global warming. Look at the wars. As we speak right now, there are people killing themselves in the name of their religion. Look at the situation of every 3 seconds a baby dies from hunger somewhere around the world, Rita. Every 48 seconds a child gets malaria. Look at the pollution that we are causing. Look what's happening downtown Beijing in China. I visited China not long ago, and I looked out of my hotel window, and I couldn't see the other side of the road. It was just so densely polluted. Look at all these earthquakes, the landslides, the tsunamis. It's almost like Mother Nature is shouting to us, stop, 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 stop. Do something good, positive, change the planet. So I'm all for that.
But I mean,
I'm sure you're...
There are so many people that don't even believe that the earth is alive, and the earth has a level of consciousness that, Mother Nature's, I don't think, is very happy with us. And
that's what I'm saying. Mother Nature is a living entity. Mother Nature can feel this negativity, this negative force that is partly being created by humans. Tell me, Rita, a little about yourself. You've been doing this show for how long?
I've been doing this show for 7 years, but I mean, what I do is I am a medical intuitive and a naturopath, so I do health readings for people and write books, and I do stuff. I do a lot of stuff.
And your listenership, the people who listen to, for instance, this program when it goes out, where are they? Most of them are in America, or where?
Yeah, I would say that the majority are in America, but they listen all over the world. I mean, because it's distributed through YouTube, it's distributed through my website. There's an RSS feed. There are where the network, Inception Radio Network, airs, which is on a bunch of different network radio outlets around the world. So all over the place. It's amazing to me.
Well, that's one positive thing that the internet did. That is to link us up so very powerfully in an instant. I have a radio show which I've been doing for 13 years in the United States with it's called the Doug Stephan Show. It's in 48 markets, so I do it every Wednesday. Just for 10, 15 minutes. I met Doug Stephan 13 years ago in Los Angeles when I was promoting one of my books. And the response was so positive that he said, I want to have you once a week on my show. And we became very close friends during these 13 years. And I do my radio show out of, my BlackBerry, out of airplanes, out of buses, my car, when I travel. And I'm around the world, like in Tokyo, and I do this. So I still do the show. So it just shows you how technology has advanced so tremendously, especially through the network of the internet and the global communication and the satellites. It's really crazy. And parallel
Uri,
to this, yes?
They just gave me the 2-minute mark. So we need to wrap up.
Okay, here is the wrap up. I send my love to everyone and a big hug and a big kiss. And remember, when you wake up tomorrow morning, put yourself in an attitude of gratitude. So that's what I want you to remember. I love you all. Check out my website. It's urigeller.com, and email me, and I'll send you back an email.
Thank you so much for coming on the show. You were a pleasure to have on. And to be honest with you, I kind of didn't expect this wonderful communication. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. I love you. Bye.
Bye. That's Uri Geller. His webpage is urigeller.com. And we will be back with Cash Peters after these words from our sponsors.
Just Energy Radio with your host, Dr. Rita Louise, will return right after these messages.